Good evening. Welcome to this month's Whiskey Me live tasting. This month we're featuring two relatively new distilleries. As you know, we've got Ardnamurchan from the remotest, most westerly bit of Scotland anyone could possibly think of. And then right down the bottom other corner of the UK, we've got Copper River down in Chatham in Kent. Both of them, interestingly, I think, and no doubt our guests will correct me if I'm wrong, released their first whiskey in 2020. So they're kind of right aligned with each other in terms of age, and they're fresh off the production line. But both fantastic and both doing, I would say, rather different things. Very two different style whiskies, both from the British Isles. So as usual, we're going to commence things with this month single malt Scotch, which is Ardnamurchan, the AD core release, and we've got Graham.
You do. How you doing, Tristan?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us tonight to talk through this wonderful new distillery.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Yeah. And you're correct. Yeah, 2020 that we launched. So creeping up to 4 years already, actually.
Time flies, right? I remember being at the whiskey show many years ago, and I heard then that Adelphi were going to build a distillery of their own, and I was very excited because and perhaps you can elaborate on this. Adelphi, of course, have a long history of independent bottling, and some of my favorite independent bottled whiskies I've ever tasted have come out of the Adelphi stable. So maybe let's start there, actually. Do you want to start talking a little bit about Adelphi, and then we'll move on to the distillery?
Yeah. That's the company. Adelphi and Ardnamurchan are one and the same, really. So Adelphi is the independent bottling arm. I'm sure a lot of your viewers are familiar with indie bottling, but I guess we've been going for just over 30 years now on that side, primarily doing single casks, mainly Scotch whiskey, but we do the odd rum or Armagnac or world whiskey, or even mix the two together sometimes. And actually just over 10 years ago this month, we started our own distillery. So we've just celebrated our 10th birthday within 3 weeks now. So yeah, it's like you say, time flies. 10 years is a nice wee milestone, and Adelphi turning 30, not too bad either. We're not quite up at the 300 years of Berry Bros and that, but we can try.
That's true. I mean, there are certainly older independent bottlers out there, but I've always enjoyed your stuff. Like whenever I'm at a trade show or whatever, I'll always make a beeline to taste some independent Adelphi bottlings, because they're always nice, high cask strength, but full of flavor examples is the way I would always think of them.
Yeah, that's good to hear. It's something as a booze geek myself, I quite like the unadulterated whiskey sometimes, when it's just pure out of a cask moment in time. You'll never get to try that exactly in the same way again. So yes, it's good fun.
So with Ardnamurchan, what was the intention here? I mean, obviously it's build a single malt distillery, but when they were sort of laying out the plans to do this, how does the sort of design process work? What was the intended flavor profile they wanted to make? And how does this sort of equipment and other sort of factors play into that?
So, well, I guess firstly, to let people know where it is, like you alluded to in your intro, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's the very far west coast of Scotland. It is a peninsula, which is where we get our name from. But we're between the Isle of Mull on the south and the Isle of Skye on the north. So very much in the Western Highlands. And I guess you can allow the area that you're building a distillery to almost to inform the flavor you want to make, right? So we want to fit in kind of spiritually to the West Coast. And if we zoom out a little
like that,
bit,
spiritually is good.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't necessarily taste of anything, right? But we want to be influenced by our neighbors. We want to maybe fit into the neighborhood, as you will. So if you zoom out a wee bit from Ardnamurchan, we've got our pals across the water at Nicknean, which are, literally 5-6 miles from us if you have a boat or something. You've got Tobermory and Lechaig across the water, out a wee bit further, and you get to Talisker, to Ben Nevis, to Toravaig, and right down to Campbelltown with Springbank and Glen Scotia and Glengyle. They've all got something wee bit dirty, a wee bit rugged, a little bit funky about them, is the word that's often used down in Campbelltown. And I think we wanted to create a spirit that fits into that. So before we even get into maturation, we wanted to make an oily spirit and to have a really textural, viscous mouthfeel in everything that we do. So we decided to do peated whiskey for 6 months, unpeated whiskey for 6 months, and then that gives us, on the blending side, when we create the recipes, quite a lot of freedom to play with. We're a relatively traditional distillery. Apart from that, all dunnage warehousing, all matured on site on the West Coast. And we are one of the Jim Swan distilleries in terms of kind of inspiration and consultancy in the early days. But I think it would be fair to say, from a sort of maturation angle, we don't follow the STR route. We don't use a lot of wine casks and things. But yeah, oily spirit in a remote location that we want it to taste like the area that we're in,
Yeah, so that kind of maritime note, maybe a little bit of smoke, and then I guess a sort of robust spirit character to it.
Yeah, very much. And we also don't shy away from being very distillate forward, doing naked bourbon releases, doing stuff that's not being too masked by the casket that's maturing in. I'm a big fan personally, and I think the company is, of whiskey which tastes of the distillery that it comes from, right? So we want it to, the maturation is very important. It's bringing something to the party, but it should always taste like the DNA of our kind of wee rural distillery out there,
Yeah, sure. You've actually had quite a few releases now, actually, haven't you? I was looking at it a few weeks ago, and there's a fair number of bottles been put out now. So obviously we're trying the core release tonight. Tell me a bit about the rest of them, though. Is it different blends, different ratios of peated and unpeated, and then throw in some different casks as well, and that kind of mixture makes up all the different releases, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, that's a pretty fair summary, Tristan. I guess the core was first launched pretty much 4 years ago, September 2020. It came out, and that's a batch product. We've got a cask strength version, which is the core with a wee bit of a boost, more bourbon, more West Coast character, more peat. And then we'll kind of pepper the releases with limited editions throughout the year. We'll do things like sherry casks. We've got quite a well-established collaboration with a champagne company called Paul Lanois. So we do that every summer. So that's our unpeated distillate, matured in these white wine barriques from a very, very small champagne producer. And yeah, by and large, having a bit of fun. Some people might have seen we did I don't know if you would say celebration, but we did a whiskey called the Midgie this year. So we were having a bit of fun, right? And we were talking about, so the way it works in Ardnamurchan, to reverse a wee bit, is I'm quite lucky. So I'm one of the sales guys, right? But I do a bit of export, a bit of the UK, that sort of thing. But crucially, I'm in the blending team as well. So we have rather than having a master blender, Alex Bruce, who's the MD, decided, let's get the sales team in to be the blenders. So 5, now 6 of us will make every recipe. So it means we can give you some good insight. We learn a bit ourselves, which is really good, and we can all, as the journey goes on, we can learn a wee bit more. So this Midgie character that we were doing earlier this year, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, right? And we were talking about the Ardnamurchan label. I've got the core one here. There's a wee sort of an emblem of the lighthouse, which is one of the big landmarks out there. There aren't a lot of landmarks except for hills and moorland, right? But we were talking about what animal would maybe represent our peninsula the most. So we've got loads of wildlife out there, loads of wild deer, things like pine martens, like sea eagles, orcas, dolphins, an incredible amount. But to a degree, a lot of that's been well done, well trodden in the Scotch whisky path. So I kind of had a throwaway comment and said, well, what's really a West Coast animal that you cannot escape when you're out here in the summer is a Midgie. So that's the most ubiquitous
of all animals in the West Coast, I should think.
Oh, unbelievable, right? So we've done that as a bit of a fun UK only one this year. So people might want to have a wee look for that as well. And it's, you know, I think it's quite, it shows that we're up for having a laugh. You know, we take it very seriously. You know, we like what we do, but I think you should also be able to have a laugh in the whiskey industry too, right?
And also worth stating that it's a vegan product and no midges were harmed or used, at least as a botanical. That's probably harmed because that's just the way of life up there, right? You're slapping midges all the time.
Hey, you leave the still house window open, and you know they're attracted to CO2, right? So essentially, a distillery is a CO2 factory. So they do enjoy coming in the windows, and if there's some spirit lying around, yeah, we'll manage to see off a few of them. But a glorious death, you could argue.
Have you got open top washbacks?
No, we don't. We've got a bit of an odd combo there. Actually, we've got 4 wooden and 3 stainless steel, but not for any production purposes, really. You know, 4 of them were quite romantic and put in for the visitor centre, and then very late on, before the roof went on, we thought there's room for some more, and every washback increases your capacity. So put in 3 stainless steel quite late, but yeah, quite traditional in that regard. You know, fairly small mash tun, two pot stills, and then pretty much a similar recipe of yeasts when we do peated and unpeated. So yeah, quite a rugged, oily spirit.
It is oily. And like you say, I think your kind of summary of something between Campbelltown and then, you know, Western Isles or West Coast, because it's definitely got some Talisker or Torabeg about it, with that you know, balanced peatiness. It's obviously not Isla level of the peatiness, but it's fruity and peaty at the same time, you know, which is kind of the best, really, isn't it? You know, I like it
works well for us as a, like, the core that we're all trying tonight, and I'm seeing some nice encouraging tasting notes. But really, this is the sort of thing, if you come to us at a whiskey fair and you say, what does Ardnamurchan taste like, you get to try this, and it's the DNA in a bottle, you know. So it's 50-50 peated and unpeated, 2/3 bourbon, 1/3 sherry, just a nudge above 46%. So fairly balanced, but beyond that, like I said, it's the distillery DNA in a bottle, you know. So yeah, it's that spiritual thing, right?
This is an interesting tasting note, strawberry. I only say that because your neighbour, or nearby, probably the closest distillery to you, McNean, often gets strawberry as a descriptor. It has done in the past for us. We featured McNean twice, I think. Yeah, twice. And it's something that crops up in their product. So I wonder if that, like a super regional style of tasting note.
Yeah. A little micro climate of strawberry there.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, herbal, floral, peat. I mean, this is it. It's got that nice kind of coastal peaty, and then also some interesting herbal or fruity, floral kind of notes too. And that's great.
Yeah, I like that comment there about walking on the beach. You know, I think you alluded to it there. It's not got any of the Isla medicinal touches. You know, it's not too in your face, but I would describe it more as these kind of bonfire embers, or after you've been camping, where you've got that smell on your clothes and it's kind of clinging to it. But yeah, nice wee background to peat, hopefully.
Yeah. Can we ask what level of peat is in the peated half?
Yeah, so we peat the malt to 30 ppms. When it's mixed there, it's dropping to 15, and then a little bit of age in the cask. It's probably 10, 12 ppm that you're tasting there in the final product. We do occasionally experiment. We've never released any, but starting to bring it out to shows where we've done quite heavily peated malt up to about 88 ppm as well. So having a wee bit of fun with what's sitting in the warehouses. But yeah, that one's in a way relatively high in terms of ppm, but evidently not Isla peat. You know, we get that from the Grampian area, northeast Scotland. So
right. Nice, cool. Well, look, we're going to bring in Abby now from Copper Rivet. So if you want to stick around, Graham, and if you've got any questions for him, then by all means jump in. And of course, anyone else got any questions for Abby, then do. Hello, Abby. How you doing?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kristen. Kristen, for bringing me in. I'm already a bit nervous after listening to Graham.
He's a good speaker, Graham, eh? Well, welcome. Really, it's always great when someone, not to say that you've let us down here, Graham, but it's always great when someone joins us from a distillery, Abby.
Oh, hey, The production guys know their stuff, right? We're the sales guys that take all the credit for production team. So,
so yeah, thanks for sticking around after presumably a long day's work making whiskey and gin and whatever else you've been up to. But the distillery you got there is incredible. I was saying just before we started that it's just the most beautiful. I mean, I've not been, but the building looks incredible, and even just the sort of small shot we can get from behind you right now, it looks architecturally amazing, and you've got that incredible column still behind you as well.
Yeah, so let me quickly actually show you around, and I sit down and start giving a little bit about us. Sometimes I feel I'm very technologically challenged. So that is the mill, that side. So we grow our own grain ourselves, and been malted by malting like Muntons or crisp, based on what we are trying to do. So we bring in our grains. We've got small silos there, and then it goes through our brew house, which is a 2-vessel system, like a brewery mainly rather than a distillery. And then what we have got stainless steel fermenters, and we've got pot still, traditional pot still. I'll show you something. You can see maybe it is an inclined line arm and very narrow and tall condenser. And we've got a post chiller for that. And then we have got the column still, so which is a hybrid still, really. And then we have a small gin still, patented gin still onto the side, which is not visible that much yet from here. Yeah.
Wow. Pretty cool. Actually, you're on a fantastic vantage point to see the entire distillery there, aren't you?
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So that is us. When we're building this distillery, we try to find a place that we can fit it in one room itself. So, when people come in, they can actually have the understanding of the whole process. So, and that's why we're quite lucky that we are in this Victorian pump house, and we are in the boiler room, and the room itself is 30 meter by 10 meter and 10 meter high. So perfect for our hybrid column still, because I still remember when we were in the design phase, and we are sitting down, and when I was designing, so all the equipment is designed by us as well and locally fabricated. So when I was designing it, the whole idea was so that we should be able to make our own neutral for our gin and vodka. Yeah. And we make our grain whiskey through that as well. So we had to have a column design with the right amount of copper contact, at the same time, the right amount that we can distill up to neutral strength. So 96.7 we go. And then I remember Matthew, one of the directors, said, so how high do you need the building to be? And I said 10 meter at least. And they were like, right. Okay. It's not that easy to find a 10 meter tall building around. So we were quite lucky that it just fitted in the middle.
Right. So really the building was picked to fit the distillery spec rather than the still fit to fit the building.
Yes. Yeah. So we also had to modify the designs of our equipment when we finally found the building. But yeah, so everything, distillery, the building was picked so that we can fit everything that we wanted to do.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, there's, there's, as Graham will agree, and obviously, there's not that many column stills knocking around in the UK, especially in whiskey distilleries. There's obviously a few very, very big ones up in Scotland. And then we have a few knocking about the UK, England, making neutral spirit for vodka and gin. But it's quite unusual to see pot still alongside a column still making whiskey in the UK. In fact, I think maybe there's 2 distilleries in Scotland that have that set up. I'm thinking Girvan and Loch Lomond. I don't think anyone else has got both. Yeah.
No, I can't think of any others either. And I think it shows you the context of the scale of a column still. That's a small column still, and it's 10 meters high. So, it's great.
One thing I would like to mention in here, though, so when we say our whiskey that you're trying tonight is column distilled single malt, when we say column, it is actually not a column still; it's a hybrid still. So it's still a batch process, right? If you think about Loch Lomond still, which has got 4 plates, Ours has got 40 instead of 4. So it is a batch process still. It's still a pot still with a column on the top. So we call it a hybrid still. Because every time I say to someone that we have a column still, people think, oh, you're doing continuous distillation. We are not. We are still a batch system. We still use low ions, faint and foreshorts. Exact same principle as spirit distillation, but a little more complex when it comes to doing the reflux, doing the cuts, constantly nosing. So it's much in here is hands-on than typically what columns still are, which is typically controlled by PLCs and stuff.
So you're treating it like a pot with a very long head on it.
Pretty much, yeah. So the whole point was controlling the reflux because we wanted to create a fine and very light new make for our particular whiskey. So, for example, single malt column distilled was designed to portray the flavors that the malt has to offer, right? And slight flavors that we create from fermentation. So this is why we wanted to control through a huge amount of reflux, and we control the reflux. We don't want it to become neutral. So that's why, we keep an eye on the pressure gauges. We keep an eye on the temperature throughout the column to see that we are creating the temperature gradient, which means the alcohol gradient. So we don't lose huge amount of our congeners, because congener is what we need for the flavor. So yeah. It is controlled to have this flavor in the whiskey, so we can push forward the flavor of the malt.
And when you're distilling for your vodka and your gin, you say you're going right up to 96.2 or 3 or whatever. What sort of strength are you distilling for the sort of grain whiskey component of your whiskeys? Are you getting up near that strength, or is it a bit lower?
No, so for whiskey, grain or single malt, we go up to 94.5 as an average. It doesn't go beyond 94.7. So anything below that. So we are, as of now, we are settled out for 94.5 as an average for all throughout our distillations. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, that's obviously still very high, and it's only slightly less than 96.2 or 3 or whatever. But actually, there is quite a difference there in terms of flavor, isn't there? In terms of what's left behind.
Huge. So every time people come here for whiskey experience, we actually give them our vodka to try. And we actually explain to them our vodka has got the exact same mash bill. So our mash bill for vodka is quite complex. It's wheat, barley, rye, all raw and malted barley. It actually create a particular mouthfeel and flavor. And then when they try the whiskey made from the exact same mash bill, the grain whiskey new make, they're like, the difference in flavor from that 1.8% difference in reflux, is huge.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of grains, we've got a question here. What type of grains are you growing?
So for Copper Rivet, we grow wheat, barley, and rye. And so the barley goes
nearly
from
all of them then.
Yeah.
So what different products are those being used for then?
So as of now, we have got 2 profiles of mash. So we have got one for grain, and we've got one for single malt. So single malt, 100% malted barley, and then for grain we have got wheat, barley, rye, raw, and then malted barley as a fraction of it for enzymes.
So you do a blend of those 3 different cereals, so almost like a bourbon mash bill kind of thing.
So it is a mixed mash, yeah. So they are mashed in all together, not made separately and then blended. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting because you could do, for example, maybe not 100% rye. You might want to put some malted barley in there, but you could do effectively a rye whiskey and then be maturing that separately, and you could be doing a wheat whiskey and maturing that separately, and then blend afterwards. So where's the decision to mash prior rather than blend afterwards come from?
So that is because when we started, the first thing we wanted to start with, because whiskey we were starting to put aside for 3 years. So we're making the neutral for our grain. Neutral for our gin. So for me, I was actually in forward planning that what can we do that we can quickly switch between production for neutral and grain whiskey based on requirement, right? So we needed a particular flavor for our neutral. right? And for the grain whiskey as well. So that's why we created that mash bill that we can quickly change in between if the production required more neutral, let's say. And here we're talking about how we do it. I showed you the whole process. So we mash in at 50 degrees Celsius. So our mashing in, even for single malt, is at 50 degrees because we do temperature profiling. So we do a protein rest, then we do a beta rest, alpha rest, and then mash out at 90. So that then Lauterton. So we do the same thing for grain whiskey as well. And then 7-day long fermentation. First wash distillation in Sandy, our pot still that you have seen. For column, grain, and the neutral, the second distillation is in the hybrid still. And that is the time that we can decide that if this distillation is going to go towards neutral production or grain production. We needed the flexibility towards the start and also certain flavor element wise. So we said, let's start with this. We are approaching our ideas one after another. So we can establish brands and then we say, right, now let's work on this idea. So that's why we have not played hugely amount East. We have not played about what we have already decided that we want to do it, individual distillate and then blend and see how it goes. Okay, all these things is yet to come. But at the start, we had a story to say. We had a distillery character to make. So this is why we said, right, it is a difficult way, but I think that hard work is going to pay off when we start doing the tastings, the lineage that you try between all our products. Especially when you are trying our grain whiskey, our gin, our vodka, and all that line, and say, oh, they all started from the same grains. People just amazed by the production, to changing the parameters of production. How can you create different flavors?
And your cereals are growing pretty nearby as well, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So we grow in Kent. We've got multiple farmers we work with. It's almost 2 years ahead planning. And so all comes from Kent, yes.
It's pretty cool. So everything's made in Kent. All the equipment was fabricated, and all of the base materials. I like that.
And yeah, so we try to create the circular economy as well from the start itself. That our spent grain goes back to the same farm as well. So it also helps. We are not farmers, but working with the farmers, working with the local craftsmen. That was always the ethos of the company. And I think we were able to ingrain it from the start. Yeah.
I like that. There's a pun there, I think. Ingrain it, yeah. Right. Everyone's tasting it. And I've got to tell you, the buzzword is banana. There's a lot of chat going on here about bananas, which is what we tasted when we got the samples through a few months ago. There's definitely a banana-y note on this whiskey. And I think it's that grain component, and then couple that with the cask. I don't know, maybe some of it's coming from the fermentation, but I would imagine it's mostly that lighter grain note plus cask, right? Where the banana is.
Right. Well, Tristan, what you just said, what touched it pretty right. We have a 7-day long fermentation at a very low temperature, right? That's what actually influences a huge amount of banana in it. Yeah. So our starting temperature of fermentation is quite low because we didn't want the fermentation to go too lively because it has to last for 7 days. So we use less amount of yeast. What it does, that's why the yeast pushes the amount of the fruity flavor notes, but banana typically overtakes it because of the 7-day long fermentation.
Got you. Can't get over how much I taste banana.
yeah. So that is our distillery character, fruity floral as well as banana on the top note, almost in everything.
I like this session whiskey. I mean, I think it's a great highball whiskey. I mean, with that grain component in it, it sort of makes sense. It's fairly light. It's obviously not got too much maturation character on there. I reckon just soda water and lots of ice would be absolutely delicious with this one.
And you're absolutely correct. That's how we like to serve this as well. We like it neat as well. Who doesn't? Because it's very, very approachable whiskey, very soft. It was designed to bring more people into the world of whiskey. That's why we made it very soft and very approachable. But the moment you touch water in it, even plain water, we do use a lot of soda water. You will see the green apple notes just jumps out. Sorry, I didn't want to throw any more flavor notes in there, but literally the moment you add a touch of water, make a highball with it, is just the green apple, and banana, the balance. Yeah.
Working our way around the fruit bowl from bananas to
Mhm.
apples. Just need a bit of orange in there, and you've got the classic British trio of fruits. We got some technical questions here from Peter. So mashing at 90 degrees C is high. I guess that's because you've got non-barley grains to sort of break down initially, right? And then you lower the temperature before you get the barley in there. Is that right?
We are trying to do a single malt, so which is 100% malted barley.
Oh, yeah.
But
First one,
why we do mash out at 90 degrees Celsius is another part is we do not want our fermentation to go below 1. So final gravity, people say it goes to 996, 998, which means the yeast has completely attenuated. It has fermented all the sugar. We do not want that to happen. So what we do, we try to retain some of the sugar starch material in the wort. So by heating it up to 90 degrees Celsius, it deactivates these enzymes. So what happens in the whiskey terms, what they say, when you are transferring the wort into the fermenter, the enzyme activities carries on, and their starch still broken down into sugar. That's why you have got huge amount of going down. So we want to stop that. We want to leave some starch in there because that caramelizes inside the wash till, bringing some sweeter notes. So this is why we do mash out at high temperature. We have tried it, doing it, mashing out at 78. We have seen it dries out too much in the fermentation, and we lose some of the sweeter notes. So this is why we like to mash out on 90.
Very interesting, very interesting as well. I was wondering about the 7-day, and if you end up with any sourness or leesy sort of characters there. But it sounds like from the description, you're retaining a good sweetness there as well.
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
So I need to send you, Graham. I need to send you some bottles so you can try.
Or, we'll definitely do a wee swap for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, swapsies. Yeah. And then a question on yeast as well. Do you use Hefe yeast?
We do not use Hefe yeast. We use standard distiller's yeast. Another thing, that's why we kept simple, is that we didn't want to do any yeast trials. We already have got a lot of different variables in the process that we want to control the flavor. So we said we will keep the yeast as simple as possible, in saying that we still have 2 different kinds of yeast that we use, kind of employ different times of the year, because certain yeast produces certain amount of congeners at different time of the year. So here in Kent, summers are really hot. So the yeast that we use in summer is different than the yeast that we use in winter. So it's mainly about the flavor creation, maintaining kind of the flavors that we produce all throughout the year.
Nice.
One more thing I would like to say before I forget, I've got a habit of forgetting about that, is we always mash in with fresh water. We do not collect our second, third water from sparging. The reason being, we wanted to create a lighter whiskey. And what we always felt, when we have the sparge second, third, and fourth water, it used to drag a lot more tannins and all from the husks, which made it more maltier notes, which we didn't want. Our whole distillery character was fruity floral. So we said, right, we need to sacrifice that small amount of starch and sugar that is dragged by the third and fourth water. We do sacrifice that. So.
Well, and also, as you say, you were sacrificing some by not going a full conversion as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's not exactly you're built for the accountants, right? And efficiency here. It's,
I get told about that almost every meeting.
I bet you do, yeah. It's like, are you purposely trying to sabotage the bottom line? But it's for flavor. There's rationale behind it all,
Yeah.
So we've got everyone's now talking about dessert, basically. I hope, Bob, you weren't intending on setting fire to it over the bananas, because I think Abby might have something to say about that. This has been a carefully crafted product. It's deserves better.
A wee bananas Foster there for you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, look, fantastic. I mean, that got super technical, which we do sometimes go down that route, but not all the time. And it's always fascinating because to learn new stuff, as I have just done tonight. It's really fascinating, and obviously a lot of thought gone into what you're doing there. Next time I'm in London, I'm going to make the trip down to come see you, I think.
100%. And I know I'll tell you one thing, Tristan. You actually matched two great distilleries today. I mean, all of the distilleries are great. What I mean is even Ardnamurchan, their main aim is to distillery character. And for us as well, we do not rely too much on our barrels. You have seen, we've got the sample. It is very pale color. So I will show you the bottle. It's, I mean, very little you can see, but yeah, very pale color. And when we actually select our barrels, we actually select the ones which has got least influenced by the cask. So that is our aim, because we want that this banana fruity element that's coming through shine more, so the cask doesn't take over here.
Hey, that sounds good to my ears as well. I love people being bold and putting the distillery flavor forward. And next year I would love to do. I think we're about 90% there and talking in public now, so it's basically 100% signed off now. But I would love to do an unpeated bourbon release and just do a big batch, nothing to hide. If your distillery profile can handle unpeated bourbon, then you're onto a winner, right? So
absolutely, yeah,
would love to do that.
Cool. Well, thanks, gentlemen. Thanks so much. Really, really interesting stuff tonight, and delicious drams as well. So we appreciate your hard work and your energy, enthusiasm, and knowledge. And well, the enthusiasm and knowledge and energy, same goes for you guys watching and commenting as well. We really love all your comments and tasting notes. And yeah, that was a fun one. All right, cool. Thanks again, guys. And
thanks a lot.
Hey,
bye.
And we'll see you next time.
Nice one.